Now that we've done our first program, Hello World, let's go check out some of the other starter code that the Marin Makerspace has. Again, I'm going to go to our browser and type in Marin Maker. That will bring me to the Makerspace account. As you can see, we have some starter code and some solutions here. And each week there will be new files that you can fork and copy and start on your own. So let's look at variables. Now, there's quite a bit of instructions here. And it does look like there's some code kind of already in here. So let's just run that code and see what happens. So I get true and a class bool, and false and a class bool. That's telling me that I have a variable t that's equal to true and a variable f that's equal to false. And when I print those variables and then I'm asking what type of variable they are, I'm getting bool for boolean, which means just true or false. But there are other types of variables, and these parts, all of these different parts are going to go through them. So let's fork this over to our account, and then we can begin starting going through this. Okay, now I have a copy of it in my account, and looking at the first part, it wants us to create a variable that stores the message hello world. Well, we know that we just printed hello world, but we want to put this in a variable. So looking down at part 4 and how they assigned t equal to true, I think I can just type in message here and say equal to hello world. And then print that to the screen. Now I could print hello world to the screen, but we just put it in a variable. So let me just type in message and see if I print message, will I get hello world? And I do. It's going to come out before the true and false because the true and false are farther down on my screen. Great. Now let's go to part 2. Again, we're going to create another message that says, how are you? So I'll say message 1 equals, how are you? And how are you in quotes is a string type of variable. We'll get to test that out after message 1. Okay, if I keep going with part 2, it says, then save the message I've been better to the variable we just created, message 1, and print it to the screen. So let's see. Message 1 will equal I've been better. And again, I'll print message 1. Okay, so I'm expecting to see hello world, and then how are you, and then I've been better. Let's see what I get. And I do. I get hello world, how are you, I've been better. If I didn't print message 1 after I first initially assigned it to how are you, let's see what would happen. My feeling is that I would not see how are you. We would just see I've been better. And that's true. So if I didn't print it, I wouldn't have seen it. But that also means that I can reassign a variable. So message 1 was how are you, and it isn't always how are you. It can be changed. Okay, part 3 asks us to create a variable that holds a number. So let's do num, and a whole number, so no decimal point, I'll do 4. And then another num that does have a decimal point. So let's do 2.3. Now I'm not printing this to the screen, but perhaps I should, so I can see what's happening. Print num, print num1. And there we go. I have 4 and 2.3. Part 4 and part 5, well, part 4 is done for us. Part 5 does part of part 4, but it wants us to type each of the variables that we've just done up here. So our message 1, our num, and our num1. So let's go ahead. I'm going to copy this line and print it out again, and we'll type in message, and we want the type of message. Same thing. And then we have num and num1. Let's run that and see what type of variables our variables are. Okay, hello world and I've been better are both strings. 4 is an integer and 2.3 is a float, meaning a floating number because it has a decimal point. And you'll notice how are you doesn't show up when we type it because the last assignment to message 1 was I've been better. Now let's look at part 6, lists. A list is one of Python's most versatile compound data types. It can hold many items separated by commas, and then each item can be a different data type. So let's go ahead and create a list that uses 3 items. I'm going to call my list shopping, and lists use square brackets. So inside my square brackets, I'm going to add a string. Let's say that I want to pick up some carrots and some flour and some apples. And maybe I want to do all of this at 4 o'clock today. I'll put the number 4. Now let's print it just so that we can see what we have. And when I print it, I get carrots, flour, apples, and 4. Well, the next part of the instructions say replace the second item of the list with the number 7. Now, you might think that when you start counting 1, 2, 3, 4, that there are 4 items in the list instead of just 3, but that the second item would be flour. It is flour, but it's not how you count with lists. When you start counting in lists, you start at 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3. So if we want to replace the second item, we could come in here and say, well, the second item, which if we think is 2, remember 0, 1, 2, that would be apples. But we really want to replace flour. So it's the second item is 1. And I can change that with the number 7. And so just like we noticed above with message 1, we can reassign variables quickly, just like this. So let's print shopping again. And we should see that instead of flour, I have 7. And I do. Now it wants us to add the word danger to the list. Well, You might think that you can just add another number, another point here. So 0, 1, 2, 3. So 4, you might think you can add. However, that won't work because 4 doesn't exist. So we have to append, and we can append a string, or we could append a number. But I'm going to append a string, and then we'll print shopping again. And now I have carrots 7, apples 4, danger. You could also extend a list. So let's say I wanted to add several numbers or several strings to this list. I could go shopping.extend, and then in here, in brackets, I can add bananas and kiwi and chocolate. Now, if I print the list again, I'm going to have bananas, kiwi, and chocolate as separate items because I've extended. If I were to append it, that would be something different. But let's extend it first to see what happens. So I have carrots 7, apples 4, danger, bananas, kiwi, and chocolate all got added as separate items. If I had appended instead of extend, then bananas, kiwi, and chocolate would not be separate items, but would be an embedded list inside of my shopping list. There are a lot more things that you can do with lists, and we'll get into that later in the course. Now let's look at tuples. Tuples are like lists, but with a few different key differences. So tuples, instead of using square brackets, they use parentheses. And tuples cannot be changed. So as you noticed with when we were replacing an item, shopping 1, with 7, we are not going to be able to do that with tuples. But let's give it a try. So we'll create another variable, kind of like a list. So we'll call this errands. And let's say that we need to go to the movies. And we need to see our friend John. And we need to pick up 5 other friends. We can print our errands. And we get movies, John, and 5. And then we can try modifying it. So maybe instead of seeing John, we're going to go see Sally. So 0, 1, John would be 1. And it's already giving me squiggles. It does not like this. So let's try printing and see what happens. And we get a big error because it says you cannot assign, errands can't be reassigned because it's a tuple. So we'll get rid of that, run it again, and there's our tuple. So we cannot modify once we've created a tuple. You'd have to go in and change the original, but you can't do it through code. Now let's look at dictionaries. Dictionaries are associative arrays. They consist of keys and values and are created with curly brackets. You can assign and access certain keys or values using square brackets. Let me give you an example. I'll create a dictionary of cats. And we'll have a name, key, and a breed key, and an age key with a value of 7. And let's go ahead and print cats. I'm also going to print cats keys, it's a built-in function, and then cats values. When I run that, I get the full dictionary with the key and value of each. And then when I get just the keys, name, breed, age, and the values, EV Torty 7. Let's say I want to add to the dictionary. Maybe I want to add a favorite food. So I'm going to do adding the key cat's food and assign it a value of wet food. Now let's print cats again. And there was added the wet food. We'll learn more about dictionaries and all these other variables covered in future lessons.